we ducking? Okay. Good evening. Can I have your attention, please? Wow, this is a fantastic turnout. Thank you all for being here and for indicating that you are interested in this topic. On part of the Diversity Action Team of Rock County, I would like to welcome you. We have programs that start in September and we go through May every year. This program, as you know, is on homelessness in Rock County. And our program next month deals with race. And next month our focus is going to be on contributions of African Americans. And our main focus is going to be on building bridges and building relationships. So that program, unless we hear and get a wonderful announcement that we're going to have a cast of thousands, it'll be in our normal location, which is in the orchestra room, door 37. With that said, if you are not a member of the Diversity Action Team of Rock County and you would like to join, there is our membership forms in the back of the room that you can pick up on your way out. And without any further ado, Tammy King will introduce our panel.
Welcome and thank you all for coming tonight. I am Tammy King Johnson. I'm the manager of the House of Mercy Homeless Center. I've had the pleasure at some time or another working with all of these amazing people here on the panel tonight who are our local experts on homelessness. I'm going to ask each one of them to just introduce their name and their title, and then you're going to hear from them.
I'm Ben Thompson. I'm a sergeant with the Janesville Police Department.
My name is Tim Borowski. I'm the Resource Center Supervisor for the Gifts Men's Shelter.
My name is Kevin Levy. I'm one of the Beloit City Council and then also the Rock County Board of Supervisors.
Hi, I'm Tammy DeGarmo. I'm the Executive Director of Project 1649.
Hello, Jesse Lupnitz from YWCA Rock County. I'm Kelly Bedessim. I'm the Housing Services Director for the City of Janesville.
I'm Belinda Wellnitz. I'm a manager at Mercy.
So we're going to give each one of our panelists about 7 minutes to talk to you a little bit about their area of expertise. So they're going to tell you a little bit about the work that they do and the homeless populations that they work with. Our goal tonight is simple. It really is to break down stereotypes and to place a face on the diversity of homelessness in our community. And I think after you hear from all of our panels, you're going to understand it's very complex and it does impact a broad range of people in our community. So first we're going to start with Sergeant Ben Thompson from the city of Janesville.
Thank you. I'm far from an expert, but we'll see how this goes. I was asked to talk about perceptions versus facts on crime and homelessness. I should start by saying that being homeless in the United States is not a crime. Some of the misconceptions that our children are not safe because a person experiencing homelessness is false. The fact that the homeless men and women living in our community pose no additional threat to you or your property. In 2019, no persons experiencing homelessness were arrested for any violent crimes such as homicide, forcible rape, robbery, or aggravated assault. Nor were any persons experiencing homelessness arrested for any property crimes such as burglary, theft, motor vehicle theft, or arson. The above crimes represent the majority of the crimes track that determines a community's uniform crime rate. Not to say homeless men and women were not cited or arrested in 2019. The decision to cite or arrest a person experiencing homelessness for a violation of law or ordinance is carefully evaluated to weigh both the expectations of the community and the violation at hand. It is obviously difficult to build trust in the homeless community if we are trying to help them one day and arresting them the next. In 2019, 24 ordinance citations were issued to a person experiencing homelessness. An ordinance citation is a civil forfeiture, meaning the person needs to pay a fine or contest a citation in court. The majority of these citations were for camping on public property and trespassing. In 2019, 7 persons experiencing homelessness were arrested. An arrest is for a misdemeanor or felony crime. In both instances, the person must appear before a judge. 24 citations and 7 arrests may sound like a lot, but by comparison, in 2019, we made a combination of 3,697 arrests and citations and incidents and not involving a homeless person. That's less than 1% of all enforcement efforts involving a person experiencing homelessness. Looking at the numbers further show that out of the 24 ordinance citations issued, 2 people were responsible for 21 of those citations. 14 of the citations were for the gentleman who occupied Center Avenue and Monterey Park for 5 months. It should also be noted that of the 7 arrests, 2 people were responsible for all 7 of those arrests. Again, the Center Avenue gentleman was responsible for 5 of those arrests. Unfortunately, the 2 gentlemen that were responsible for 28 of the 31 arrests and or citations were not receptive to our outreach efforts. Absent the 2 gentlemen, we only needed to issue 3 ordinance citations to the other persons experiencing homelessness in 2019. I think that this shows that the overwhelming majority of homeless men and women in our community are not causing problems, are not being arrested, and are just trying to survive. In the last 2 years, the Janesville Police Department is taking a problem-solving approach to homelessness by creating a multidisciplinary partnership to work cooperatively at addressing homeless problems in our community. Our homeless outreach team, generally referred to as HOT, has been in existence for a little over 15 months. Our team consists of 3 police officers, community partners from ECHO and the Department of Veteran Affairs, and myself. In 2019, our team conducted 88 hours of outreach, during which time we made 84 contacts with a person experiencing homelessness. Of those 84 contacts, we provided outreach to 62 individuals, 50 males, 10 females, and 2 children. I think our HOT efforts are working to reduce the amount of time spent on homeless-related calls for service. I would like to end by saying that being homeless in the United States is not a crime.
We'll allow time for questions once all of the panelists have had an opportunity to present. Next, I'd like to introduce again Tim, let's hope I get this right. He was teasing me earlier. Tim Borowski.
There you go. Just like a game show. Well, good evening. First, I'd like to thank the Diversity Action Team for putting all this together and making kind of homelessness the focus of tonight. It's definitely a hot issue here in our city and our county. I've been asked to say a few words tonight about homelessness and addiction. This is a topic that really hits close to home for me. I've both been homeless and I've struggled for a very long time with an addiction. I mean, I've been in recovery for a lot of years, but it does hit home. The National Coalition for Homelessness latest numbers as of December 15th, 2019 estimated that 38% of our homeless across the nation were alcohol dependent. Another 26% were dependent on other illegal or harmful drugs or substances. Our gifts numbers for 2019 is pretty much right in line with that. We mirror that. There were 63% of our guests this last year were chemically dependent. Those 63%, their main focus was on recovery. I'm going to tell you though, looking back, we could probably get that number of chemically dependent men to about 70 because there was another percent of men whose focus was on mental health because of a severe persistent mental health issue, but were also chemically dependent. So that would put our numbers at about 70%. That's a pretty large number. Whether you prescribe to the idea that addiction is disease or it's a disorder, I will tell you one thing. Most professionals agree that it's the only disease that affects all 3 parts of the human condition or the person. It affects the person physically, it affects them emotionally, and it affects them spiritually. At Gifts, we've served all kinds of people. It's not just a Jesus down your throat kind of thing. We've loved on men that were Muslim, Buddhists, atheists, agnostics, and men that were overly Christian and religious, let me tell you. Listen, I know from personal experience, nobody gets up in the morning and makes a decision to be an addict. It just doesn't happen that way. Through a set of circumstances, most, including myself, had severe childhood traumas. Drugs and alcohol became our solution. They're not necessarily the overall problem. There is a root that needs to be dealt with. I want to tell you that, like myself, 90% of those men that we served this year, the root causes or the struggles that came with that chemical dependency were very broad. We learned really quick that you couldn't just love a homeless person into recovery. Although it takes a lot of love, there's a lot of areas in the addicted homeless person's life that need to be worked on. And I'm just going to go over a few of those and explain why. Their finances, as you can imagine, years of addiction destroy a person's ability not just to earn, but to manage any type of resources. Most addicts in the homeless shelter, the homeless population have huge amounts of debt. And I mean huge amounts of debt. They've gone to treatment centers with no insurance. It is astronomical. They have little to no credit. So getting a credit card or managing that huge debt is almost impossible. They've gone through foreclosures. They've got open and active small claims issues. And I'm going to tell you that it goes on and on and on. Another big struggle for the addicted guest, or one of our addicted guests, is employment. They have substantial gaps in employment. They have poor work histories because of criminal thinking, because of addictive behaviors. They don't get to work on time. They miss work. They've maybe had multiple firings. They struggle with those employability, those employment soft skills. I mean, just showing up to an interview, worrying about a first impression is not something that they've thought about trying to survive on the street. Most of them have extremely broken relationships. I mean, they come from broken homes, or they themselves have created a broken home. They've burnt bridges across their family circles. They've gone through divorces, lost custody of children. Their friends from school have had to step back to protect themselves. Most have legal issues. The addictive thinking creates a type of criminal behavior that has long-lasting ramifications. Multiple convictions. Maybe they're on probation, parole. And we work really closely at GIFTS with the drug court system. I have multiple guests right now in the drug court system. I love the drug court system. I'm going to tell you, it works. It works. But those are long-lasting issues. Even to get a person clean and sober and then to get them compliant across the board in every area is an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle. Transportation. Most of our guys, thank God for programs through the job center, but most of our guys struggle getting from a job interview to the job center to treatment and then to a probation appointment. It's been a big struggle over the years. Not to mention education, deficiencies in education or social issues, struggling, trying to fit in anywhere. That's my dramatic pause for a second. This leaves the addicted guest or the addicted homeless person, I don't care what age they are, this leaves them feeling overwhelmed, hopeless, helpless. They've got a constant negative self-narrative going on in their heads, or they feel like outcasts. I know, and I've been there. I say this to you tonight because it's people like you that can help us interrupt this cycle. It's this community. It's our JPD. I mean, thank God for you guys. It's these agencies here. It's our family. It's our community that can come together and make a huge difference, not just in these men's life, because when you make a difference in these men's life, you make a difference in your community. Because these are fathers and sons and husbands. These are future supervisors and councilmen, and I get excited talking about it. Please, please, please. Just do what you can. We live in a great city, and our men are counting on you.
Next, we're going to hear from Rock County Board of Supervisor and Beloit City Councilor, Mr. Kevin Levy.
Thank you, Tammy. One thing about it, if you know Tammy, when Tammy calls, you just say yes. I want to give kudos to the Diversity Action team who put this together tonight, but then also to Tammy, because there have been times over the weekend that I reach out to Tammy on a Saturday or early Sunday morning and saying there's individuals that don't have a place to stay, and she's up making it happen to find them a place to stay. So I want to publicly thank her for that, because I truly believe that's how you solve the problem. It's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to actually put everything into action. So as I look in the crowd and I see people, I see the chief from Beloit, chief of police, and I want to thank him for being here. And the reason I say that is because as a city councilor, I've just recently been appointed to the Rock County Board of Supervisors. But this is an issue that I push very hard in the city of Beloit. Whenever we have a meeting, whenever we're talking about the homeless population, I want to keep it on the table. Not on the back burner, but in the forefront. When we look at the night like it is tonight, as cold as it is, I often say when we go home to our beds or to our homes and we're warm, there's somebody out there that don't have what we have. And unless the communities and the council people and the board of supervisors really take a serious look and not throw a Band-Aid at it, but say this is something that we really need to look at. How can we fund? How can we get people off the street? We're definitely going to continue to have this problem. When we talk about homelessness, and I did pull some information together, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, they define people homeless, a person to be homeless if they are sleeping outside in a place not meant for human habitation, such as a car or abandoned building, or an emergency shelter or transitional housing programs. So there's a lot of definitions out there of what a homeless person is. But I think we need to remove the stereotype that it's a person just living on the street. When we talk about the youth, and we have statistics here on the youth, of saying that if a person doesn't have a home to sleep in at that night, they could be considered homeless. So until we educate and get people to truly understand what homeless truly means, they don't know how to really fight the problem. But I am here to talk about the race of disparities in homelessness. So in 2019, an estimated 568,000 Americans experienced homelessness, with African Americans making up about 40% of that total. The total figure in 2018 was about 553,000 people that were homeless. The disparity was even starker when looking at the number of homeless people with children. African Americans accounted for about 52% of that population, with whites accounting for about 35%. 48% of all people experiencing homelessness were white, 22% were Latino, and they only represented 18% of the total population. So when we talk about racial and ethnic disparities in homelessness, they're not improving over time. African Americans continue to make up the largest share of all the people who access shelters over the course of a given year, and their share has increased in recent years. We talked about the youth. Youth who are under the age of 25 and living on their own. That means without parents. This group represents 7% of the total homeless population. So in this community, what we have is periodically we have individuals to go out to get a count on how many homeless people live on the street. And that report comes out. I don't have that information right now because they just did one in January. So they're still gathering that information. So we do have people that go out and tour and see where the homeless population lives and how can we address that situation. Recently, if you want to know how you can help, and I know this may be towards the end, but if we're talking about how can we help the homeless population, there's a lot of agencies out here that address this issue. But the agencies cannot do it by themselves. It's going to take Rock County Board of Supervisors. It's going to take city councilors. It's going to take all of you who are here tonight. I'm just overwhelmed with the crowd that we have here tonight. But I think what we need to do is figure out how can we support the agencies that's doing the work, but then individually, what can we do? Talking with Mark Perry from Community Action, he said a lot of the homeless population, they need blankets, they need socks. So if you drop some of that stuff off at a Community Action or one of the shelters, they can make sure the homeless population gets that stuff that you maybe look at your house and you say, I don't need this coat anymore. Well, instead of throwing it away, get with one of the agencies and say, can you use this? Because I think everybody has to do their part. So even though I was asked to speak on the racial disparity of it, and I think that's important, but I'm just a firm believer that overall, the whole issue of homelessness is important. To me, it doesn't matter what color you are. I mean, I think the stats are important, but to me, it doesn't matter what color you are. If you're on the street, to me, we have to do something. We have to take this problem very seriously, and I'm not saying that we're not, but we have to take this problem seriously and do what we can to solve this situation that's going on.
All right, before we move on to our expert on children and homelessness, Tammy DeGarmo, how many educators do we have in the room tonight by a show of hands? Amazing. Thank you all. So many of you may know that we have close to 1,000 youth in our community across Rock County that are identified as homeless by our local school districts. And so we share in the struggles that you all in wanting to support those kids and their families. And so let's hear from Ms. DeGarmo, who is our local panel expert. Ms. DeGarmo. That's my twin, Tammy.
Hi. I also want to thank everybody for coming out, and I do not profess to be an expert on the children. In fact, I wondered why Carrie wasn't up here for children. But working with the unaccompanied homeless youth, certainly we've learned and educated ourselves on all children and students of all ages. So I'm happy to share the message and try to be the voice for those kids tonight. I was going to start with when I first started this with this program 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago, I guess this summer. Every time there was an article in the paper coming out and talking about, the high number of homeless students and our unaccompanied youth, I would always, that next day or that day, I would get so many phone calls and emails about this isn't real. This is just a way for the schools to get money. We don't really have all of these kids. I don't see them. And thank God we don't see 1,000 homeless children on the street. I mean, what would that look like and what would that be like? But one example that I always give from our own program, one of the unaccompanied homeless girls that stayed with us for 18 months, when she first came to us, she spent the vast majority of her nights outside because she tried couch surfing, but she didn't always have a lot of places. Those places ran out. She spent nights walking around Woodman's or Walmart because it's 24 hours. She spent nights before she would get kicked out at the 24-hour convenience stores, hanging out in their bathrooms, trying to catch a nap. She spent nights at the handicap ramp, the brick handicap ramp at the Hedberg Public Library. So no, you don't see her, but she's on the other side of Main Street, literally on the ground. So they do exist. Kevin alluded to some of the definition. I was just going to share the actual definition for the McKinney-Vento law, which is the federal law that informs how our homeless students are treated and the rights that they have that the school districts must provide for them. But it defines homeless children and youth as those who lack the fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. So that includes sharing housing due to a loss of housing or economic hardship, because so many of our kids are doubled up. They may not be not under a roof, but they may be in a place where there should be a whole lot fewer people, or a place that may not be safe just to be under a roof. Those living in hotels, motels, trailer parks, campgrounds due to lack of alternative adequate housing. Those who are living in our emergency and transitional shelters, living in a car, sleeping in a public or private place not designed or to be used for sleep, and that includes things like parks, abandoned buildings. We've had so many of our teenagers that are sleeping in an abandoned house, an abandoned garage. I've had kids that have come to us that were sleeping in storage units. Lost my mind there. Storage units. Well, this time of year, would you like to be sleeping in a storage unit? You don't have electricity, you don't have water, you don't have heat. And that really is substandard housing as well. So all of those qualify our kids as being homeless kids. It's not just whether or not they're under a roof at night. It's really the situations they're in, and moving from place to place is no way for anybody to live, let alone a child. Then I wanted to share a few statistics. which is always fun. 40% of Wisconsin homeless are children, are families, and 10% are youth or young adults who are 18 to 24. So that's a really big piece of the puzzle. And when you think of 40% of our homeless people being families, it's a whole lot of kids out there. So as Tim was saying, you know, we have to really break these stereotypes of who is a homeless person when it's little kids that are sitting next to our own kids at school, and we may or may not know that. So that is homelessness. In the 2018-19, the last completed school year, 1,154 students in Rock County experienced homelessness. The other thing I like to remind people of is they aren't necessarily all homeless at one time, but during the course of that academic year, that's how many are identified as experiencing homeless at some point during that school year. 241 of them were unaccompanied youth, so about 21% of our student population, or homeless population, were unaccompanied youth. So they are not able to live safely with their parent or legal guardian. That's the definition for our unaccompanied. Beloit has the highest percentage of homeless students in the state, with 8.7% of their student population experiencing homelessness. Janesville's the fifth highest, with 4.5%, and that's just behind Milwaukee, Green Bay, and Racine. So a couple other statistics when I was talking about how our kids are living. 78% of them are living doubled up, so most of them are. Maybe their family's staying with grandparents, maybe they are staying with friends, you know, somehow under a roof. But not their own, and therefore not permanent in any way for them. 12% are in shelters, 6% in hotels, and 11% are unsheltered or in inadequate housing. When you look at our unaccompanied homeless youth, so our older kids, about 90% of them typically are couch surfing, but a lot of times that's intermittently because they may have a place to stay 3 or 4 or 5 days a week, but then they wouldn't be able to stay there certain days. A lot of times they can only go there like after their friends' families are home, or they can't come in until a certain time of day or night, and they have to be out by a certain time of day or night. So maybe they have a literal place to sleep that night, but it's not really a home. You know, they don't have a place to keep their things. They can't come and go as they wish. So really, when you think about what's that impact of homelessness on children, the only word that really comes to mind to me over and over is devastating. If you think of all the issues that are going to be talked about tonight, or that we can think of that kind of put parents in homeless situations, it's hard for us to wrap our heads around. I mean, some of us have probably experienced one or maybe more of those hardships and dealt with some of those issues. But what does that do to a child when they're still like in that developmental stage and trying to learn and grow? Research really shows that poverty and homelessness has a wide range of negative effects on the physical and mental health and well-being of our children. And a lot of that is due to chronic stress, chronic or toxic stress from childhood trauma, which I think Tim also alluded to. That includes living in survival mode. We talk about that a lot for our kids, especially our unaccompanied kids. That actually can change your brain development, and it affects your attention, your decision making, your learning, and your responses to stress. So when we think about it, social and emotional development, a lot of behavioral issues for all of those hands that raised for being educators, having to, you know, handle that disruption potentially in the classroom, or being able to think about where this kid might be, what they might be dealing with outside of school, all of that comes into play. And they may show it as insecurity, impulsiveness, kind of the two ends of the spectrum of aggression or maybe complete withdrawal. They may need extra attention or be very needy in that way, clingy, or have trouble fitting in. And unfortunately, about 50% of our homeless students struggle with depression and anxiety because of all of that stress that they're living under. Cognitive development and the ability to learn. Chronic stress definitely affects your concentration and memory. A lot of times if you're homeless, you have food insecurity, you may not be eating regularly, or you may have very poor nutrition. That affects a kid's ability to learn and their brain development. So schooling in general suffers. It may be attendance because of transportation, or mom and dad not knowing how they're going to get around and not being able to then get the child to school. It could be because of moving and being transient. We're staying here, then we're staying here, moving communities, changing schools. The increased risk of, you know, kids dropping out is significant. And then, of course, that inadequate education is going to contribute to the continuation of the cycle of poverty. One of the things that we experience a lot with our older kids is mental health and health issues. So, they have lack of access to health and dental care. We have so many kids that we're working with in high school that don't remember the last time they were at the dentist. So getting them dental care, making sure that they learn about health care and, having a primary care physician instead of just living in and out of the emergency room is an important part of what we help teach them. Kids, again, the poor nutrition, the anxiety, low self-esteem, terrible sleeping patterns. I can tell you that from the kids that live in our transitional living homes, terrible sleeping patterns. But that's just a result of, I know Tim mentioned the adverse childhood experiences, and that just leads to so many things in their life now and in the future. The other things, of course, are homeless youth are at increased risk of exposure to violence and trauma. And for our older kids, risky behaviors such as smoking or self-medication and starting to use different substances, engaging in early sexual activity, which increases their risks of STDs and HIV and unplanned pregnancies. Again, the mental health issues, self-harm is a big issue for our kids. Unhealthy and abusive relationships. So many of our kids end up in unsafe situations and they don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. So to them, it's just the normal. Exploitation. Tons of our kids have had their identities used or stolen. People take advantage of them to take their, they take their food share or whatever it may be. They utilize their credit. They put these kids in terrible situations. Sometimes it's their families that do this. So that's something that they have to unravel as a young adult to be able to move forward on their own. And then unfortunately, assault. If kids are couch surfing or staying on the street, that puts them at very high risk for, having physical or sexual assault. Trafficking, 60% of the girls over the 6 years that we've had Robin House have been victims of human trafficking. And a lot of our kids, I would say probably 80 or 85% probably of the youth that we work with, the older teens, survival sex is a part of human trafficking. And unfortunately, when the decision is really not whether or not you're going to be with somebody, the decision is whether or not, if this person's offering you food or protection or a place to stay or transportation somewhere, you're a kid that hasn't eaten for 3 days, that's not a choice anybody should have to make. And because so many of our kids have been sexually abused as children, perhaps, their bodies mean very little to them anyway. So, that's just one of those things that when they're coming to our program, it takes a lot to undo what that does to a person emotionally and mentally. So, my thing too is what does that then look like as an adult? And when we're talking about the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, and you want me to shut up? Okay, I just keyed in on. Let me just say, I will say lastly, so the adverse childhood experiences is a 10-point measurement of things that have happened to a person between the ages of 0 and 17. And that's things like experiencing violence or abuse, witnessing violence in the home or community, substance abuse in the home, mental health problems in the home, those kind of things. When the initial study was done, 61% of adults experienced at least one, 1 of 10. 17%, so much smaller, experienced 4 or more. Our kids, we do the ACEs on them when they come in, and our kids typically score 7 to 10. So when you think about, by the time they're getting to us, they may be 16 to 21, but this is all things that happen to them as young children. So that definitely affects them down the road, as Tim was saying too. Difficulty forming healthy and stable relationships, maintaining employment, struggling with their finances, turning to alcohol or drugs as a method of self-medicating. And unfortunately, those things can then be passed on to their children. So I go back to my original word, the impact of homelessness on children is devastating. So thank you for coming out tonight, and as Kevin said, it takes the whole community to make a difference. I'm done.
I took your extra minute.
And all of that from a woman who doesn't consider herself an expert. Can we hold it till the end, please? All right, but we won't forget, we'll let you go first. Okay, awesome. Next, Jesse Lupinitz from the YWCA.
You guys will probably be thanked by every single one of us, which is probably not enough. So thank you again. I was asked to join the panel to talk about the intersection of homelessness and domestic violence. And I think from the people that you've already heard from, when those kids grow up and face all these ACEs, and then that leads to addiction, it leads to unhealthy relationships, which leads them to our programs. The YWCA has 2 programs for domestic violence. Our emergency shelter, which is emergency basic needs, and then our transitional living program, which is more of a stable housing program, but that's still not a permanent housing situation. People still leave there homeless as well. About 30% of the families that come through the domestic violence shelter at the YWCA go on to a permanent housing situation. And the other 70% are gonna end up homeless at another shelter or back with their abusers. So it's a pretty devastating number, if I wanna keep using that word, of people that come through there. Many reasons that people end up in a domestic violence situation, whether they're, grew up in that and it's the norm. There's other layers that come with the domestic violence, addictions, and those issues have to be handled separately. Not one place can handle all of those issues. So you have somebody with layers and layers of domestic violence, mental health issues, addictions, and those have to be handled separately for someone to completely heal and move forward and be a successful part of the community. I don't know what else to tell you guys. I'm short, sweet, and simple.
Next, we're going to have Kelly Bedessen from the city of Janesville, who's going to talk about affordable housing and the cost of living on a minimum wage, followed by Belinda Wellnitz from Mercy Health.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for showing up tonight. I think this is an impressive turnout. Again, my name is Kelly Bedessen. I'm the Housing Services Director for the City of Janesville. Our department receives grants, state and federal grants. Those grants are intended to increase affordable housing as well as homelessness prevention. Rent assistance is one of our commonly used homelessness prevention tools. It's commonly referred to as Section 8. This is a federally funded program that's designed to assist low-income populations with decent, safe, and sanitary housing. In May of this last year, the city organized a family empowerment fair. This empowerment fair coincided with the opening of our rental assistance waiting list. The fair brought together over 35 service providers. That day we gave out over 5,000 units of food, forgave hundreds of dollars in library fines, connected people to services that they may or may not have known were available in our community. And we established our waiting list. That waiting list is over 800 citizens at that time. We had 500 people sign up for our waiting list that first day. We currently have a waiting list still of about 500 people. New clients are only brought on to the rental assistance program as current clients leave or are terminated for our program. The city of Janesville distributes rental payments totaling upwards of $225,000 a month to landlords here in town. We assist about 500 households every single month. Most of our clients have a household income of under 30% of county median income. For a family of 4, that's under $20,000. In the spirit of this discussion and dispelling myths, I asked our case managers what were the biggest myths that they wanted me to talk about tonight with our rental assistance program. That first myth is that people on rent assistance don't work. Absolutely not true. In reality, 50% of our clients are either employed or have some other source of non-benefit income. In addition, 64% of our clients are on Social Security or disability. The next myth that they wanted me to talk about was that you get free rent on rental assistance. Again, that's not true. In the truth, our clients, they have to pay 30% of their income towards their own rent. 77% of our clients pay over $200 a month towards their own rent. So if you take that $200 times 500 households, our client population is contributing $100,000 a month towards this community. An additional myth is once people receive Section 8, they never leave. Again, not true. In reality, 60% of our clients have been on our program for 5 years or less. Each year, our case managers conduct an annual interview with our clients. They bring in what they are earning for income. We adjust what they're contributing towards their rent based on their income. Oftentimes, our clients will continue to increase their income, their portion of the rent increases, and eventually they graduate from our program and are no longer Section 8 clients. Oftentimes, we like to try and get them into our other programs for down payment assistance and get them into a home of their own. Another myth we hear a lot is a specific building is Section 8. The City of Janesville does not own any public housing. There are some subsidized housing units within the City of Janesville. However, we issue what's called a voucher program. Our clients are allowed to choose where they live. As long as the landlord approves and we go in and do the inspection and the unit passes and it's considered reasonable rent, we have clients that live in almost every census tract in this community. Another myth is that Section 8 tenants are bad tenants or criminals. That's absolutely not the case. There are bad tenants everywhere. They're not just Section 8 tenants. I can guarantee you this. Our rental assistance clients are screened before they come onto our program. We go back 3 years to make sure that they don't have history of violent crime, history of drugs. If they do, they don't come onto our program. Once they're on our program, we continue to do that screening, and if they violate our program rules, they are terminated from our program. So we do take that behavior very seriously, and when we find out that our clients have not complied with our program, we do terminate them. Another one is that a Section 8 tenant can't be evicted. We often have landlords that don't want to take on Section 8 because they believe that they have some kind of protections. That's not true. Section 8 clients are not a protected class in the City of Janesville. Property owners have the right to evict a Section 8 tenant just like they would any other non-assisted tenant. One of the biggest issues that our citizens and our clients face is the lack of affordable housing in our community. Affordable housing is defined as 30% or less of your gross monthly income going towards your housing costs. Once you go above that 30%, you're considered housing burdened. We estimate that the vacancy rate right now in the City of Janesville is about 2% or less. This makes it very difficult for those who have less than perfect rental history to obtain housing. Obviously when the rental market is tight, landlords become much more restrictive on who they rent to. In addition, basic law of supply and demand, when there's less available units, the price of units goes up. And we've seen that cost of rental units go up exponentially over the last several years. Oftentimes, we will have clients that will relinquish their voucher, essentially give up their assistance that Section 8 is going to provide to them because they cannot find a unit in the 120 days that we allow for them to locate a unit. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, the hourly wage one must earn in order to afford a 2-bedroom in Rock County is $15.25 an hour. At minimum wage, a household would need to work 78 hours in order to afford that same 2-bedroom unit. While this may be possible for a dual income household, we, according to the census, have over 4,500 single parent households in this community. So in order to work 78 hours a week, it is almost impossible for a single parent to afford a 2-bedroom unit. We hope that we will start to see that vacancy rate go closer to 8 to 10%, which is what's considered a healthy vacancy rate in a community. As many of you are likely aware, we have 2 multifamily developments underway in the City of Janesville. We have not built a multifamily project in about 20 years, so this is exciting news for us. We will have approximately 379 units between those two developments. Now, these two new developments have been described as market rate or luxury apartments. That won't necessarily help our clients, but as these units open up, we hope to see that trickle-down effect where units will begin to open up. Rental market will be easier for clients to find and citizens to find rental units. But the project I'm most excited to tell you about is the one that will be in front of City Council this next Monday night. River Flats project is a 92-unit affordable housing development that will be coming to downtown Janesville. The building will consist of 2 and 3 bedroom units. Amenities in the building are a washer and dryer for every unit, common space including a shared kitchen and exercise facilities. And with council approval, those units will likely open in summer of 2021. And I will leave you with the same sentiment that Kevin did. As most of us go home and crawl into warm beds, we have people in this community that don't get to do that tonight. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Belinda Wellness, and I'm from Mercy Health. I'm the manager for the Addiction Day Treatment Program, the WINGS program, and the Child and Adolescent Day Treatment Program. I'm here to give a perspective from a treatment facility and treating patients who are struggling with both homelessness and mental health. It is estimated that 25% of people who are homeless have a serious mental illness. An additional 45% have some kind of mental disorder. And 28% of people who are homeless have been in a psychiatric hospital at some time in their life. The most common mental illness among people experiencing homelessness are depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorders, and substance use disorders. Mental health can impair a person's ability to be resilient and resourceful, can cloud thinking and impair judgment. The stress of experiencing homelessness may exacerbate previous mental illness and lead to anxiety, fear, depression, sleeplessness, or substance use. For all these reasons, people with mental illness are at greater risk of experiencing homelessness. As others have said before, there's a big correlation between homelessness and trauma. Trauma is prevalent in the narrative of many people's pathway to homelessness. Research has shown that people who are homeless are likely to have experienced some sort of trauma, often in childhood, estimatedly 85% or higher. And secondly, people are likely to experience traumatic events while homeless. For instance, witnessing a traumatic event or being re-traumatized by feeling hopelessness, helplessness, and powerlessness. And thirdly, homelessness is a traumatic event in itself. Loss of home, loss of family connections, loss of social roles. And to kind of point out, there's 2 types of trauma. Type 1 trauma occurs at a particular time and place and is short-lived, such as a serious accident, sudden loss of a parent, or single sexual assault. But then there's type 2 trauma, which refers to events which are typically chronic, begin in early childhood, and occur within family or social environments. They're usually repetitive and prolonged, involve direct or indirect harm or neglect by caregivers or other entrusted adults in an environment where escape is impossible. Many homeless people have experienced both type 1 and type 2 trauma. This is called compound or complex trauma. Our services at Mercy for behavioral health are wide, and homelessness impacts each level of our care. Our highest level of care for behavioral health is our inpatient behavioral health unit. We have a 12-bed unit that serves patients for inpatient care for psychiatric needs and also detox services. We have the day treatment services that I manage that I talked about before, but we have the adult addiction day treatment program. We have the WINGS program, which is an adult program for mental health, and the child and adolescent day treatment program. Mercy also has a large outpatient counseling center or clinic that has psychiatrists, psychologists, and therapists. And we have an in-home autism program as well. Homelessness impacts our patients in all of our levels of care. Treating patients who are homeless and without having basic needs met makes implementing successful treatment a challenge. We've had a wonderful partnership with Gifts, and I can't even think about the numerous or how many patients we have partnered with to make a better life for the men in the gift shelter. So I'm very thankful for that. But obviously Gifts is not an option for everyone, and so we do still have patients who struggle with homelessness. Some of the impact homelessness has on our services for patients that we serve would be, for example, in our inpatient behavioral health unit. People sometimes aren't discharged to a home or an address, they're discharged to the street. And they do not have housing or availability for a stable place to live, which leads to things such as their medications being stolen, or they can't establish a routine, or they're forced or have no other choice but return to an unstable or abusive situation, which could lead to additional trauma, and lack of transportation to get medication refills after the medication is provided at the hospital. In our day treatment programs, we've seen an increase in case management by our staff, our patients, in order for them to get their basic needs met so they can focus on their mental health and recovery. Some examples of challenges with homelessness that we've seen in a day treatment program have been, like you had just said, some people do have Section 8 housing vouchers, but there's no apartments available, or none that they can afford, or that they're able to get hotel vouchers, but there's no availability at the hotels. That has been a struggle. At our child and adolescent day treatment program, we see kids who are living in bedrooms with families of 5, or removed from the custody of their mother because they're living in a car, and now they're dealing with that trauma. The biggest issue for us is that the patients aren't able to implement skills that they've given to improve their mental health and addiction due to their circumstances, because their basic needs are not being met. Because we serve patients that are struggling with homelessness, we implement treatment specific to them, and in twofold. First, like I said, we provide and incorporate case management services to assure basic needs are being met so patients can focus on healing their mental health and recovery. But secondly, because of the big link between trauma and homelessness, we provide trauma-informed care, which includes things such as providing a safe place, opportunities to rebuild control, strength-based empathetic approach, and teaching patients to develop and manage relationship with others. As I look at our different levels of care and have heard over the many years what would be needed and what would be beneficial for our patients that we serve, a couple things come to mind. One is obviously stable and safe housing for patients, but also a central place for providers to go to access services for patients, or even better, a central place for patients to go to access services and be evaluated and kind of linked to those services. There's a lot of people doing a lot of great things, but we need to be able to link patients to these services, which will result in best patient care and assuring that patients are getting their basic needs met so they can focus on their mental health and recovery. Thank you.
So can we all agree that homelessness is a complex issue? A very diverse issue. Thank you to all of our panelists. At this time, we will take questions, and the lovely lady here in the pink. Oh, no, I thought it was, no? It was you. You don't want to ask your question? Oh, you're beautiful from up here.
I would just like to ask Tammy to give the definition of Project 1640.
She would like Tammy DeGarbo from Project 1649 to give the definition of the organization.
Lots of people don't know.
Because lots of people don't know.
Because I ran out of time. Because I can talk a lot. Project 1649, the title came from a short documentary that was made about 10 years ago, and it was 16 hours and 49 minutes between school ending one day and starting the next, and the video focused on unaccompanied homeless youth and the fact that these kids who can't be with their families for whatever reasons and have no place to be, it's a very dangerous, lonely, scary time for them to just survival mode it. So our organization ended up grassroots effort. Once people learned that this population existed, turned it into an organization, and now we work with those unaccompanied homeless youth in the high schools and to have 2 transitional living homes, one for girls and one for boys for ages 17 to 21.
Other questions? Are you willing to come up front?
Oh, sure.
All right. We're going to be interactive for a bit.
The whole time that you guys were talking, I was kind of thinking about a dream idea, and then the last thing that you said zeroed in on it. I work at the Rock County Job Center at the front desk, so everybody that you've dealt with, all the different types of people you deal with have come to the front desk, and so often we don't have the answers for them because we're stuck saying there just aren't always resources for every person in that situation. But my coworker and I were talking about this today too, and as many of you know, Rock County Human Services is moving out of the job center, and our job center partners are as well, and over to the old Pick and Save. And what if the job center location was that place where all of these services could be put together for people to access? We have human services and job center partners and behavioral health counseling and the clinic and drug court and juvenile justice, one side of the street, homelessness and housing resources, not just to get them into housing, but to give people the more immediate resources that they need to reach while they're homeless at the job center.
All right. So is that an actual question? All right, so we're going to ask County Board Member Kevin Levy to respond.
I fail to understand the part where she said I was just appointed to Rock County Board of Supervisor like 2 or 3 months ago. We're going to do the best we can here. I think it's an excellent question. I'm not going to commit to anything being new on the board, but I think with the number of people in this room today, if that's an idea that people like and it's a feasible idea, we have to explore the options. We have to ask the question. Oftentimes we have great ideas, but we don't bring them forward. Now, when she was speaking, I saw a lot of people saying that may work. We can sit in this room tonight and say that may work. So let me put on my political hat a little bit, and I think I see the city manager from Janesville here. But the way things kind of work when you go to council meetings or Rock County Board meetings, the strength is in numbers. So I think if we would have a number of individuals that go forward and say, we think this is something that you really need to look into, but not just bring the problem to us, bring solutions as well. Here's how we see that it could work. Here's how it would benefit the entire Rock County. It could, everything that you name, one-stop shopping, because if I'm homeless, I don't have transportation to go to 8 or 9 different buildings. So what great idea if I can just go to one place and tap into all the services that I need, but it has to start someplace. The idea has to be brought forward to the Beloit City Council, Rock County Board of Supervisors, the Janesville City Council, and let those individuals and keep pressure on them. Because if it's something that you really believe in, you gotta fight for it, you gotta push for it. I think it's a good idea. I'm gonna start talking to a couple of people about it, but I think what we need to do is if it's feasible and something that everybody truly believes in, we need to organize and see how can we at least get it on somebody's agenda. And I hope that answers the question.
Are you willing to come down, ma'am?
I think I have a strong enough voice.
Well, go for it.
So I'm wondering, and I'm curious about how the Janesville transportation system has brought themselves into this conversation. And the reason I ask that is as we talk about getting from point A to point B, whether you can or cannot do that. Years ago when I was much younger and single, my car broke down and I had to use the Janesville transport system. I waited for 40 minutes. 40, and I have not seen that change much. And I know there's monies and finances and usage, but I'm wondering how they've been brought into this conversation, if at all.
All right, everybody heard that question, right? All right, before I put Ms. Petrozulo on the spot, is there anyone else here from the city of Janesville that would like to respond? All right, Jennifer. Do you want to introduce yourself first?
I'm Jennifer Petrozello. I'm the Neighborhood and Community Services Director with the City of Janesville, and that's the department within our organization that works with Housing Services, who Kelly is our Director for Housing Services, as well as Janesville Transit System and then the Recreation Division. So I think that with our Janesville Transit System, like many local government programs, there are always limited resources. By partnering our housing services and our transit within the same division, we have a lot of awareness about the populations that we serve, a lot of commonalities between those two groups. So we're very sensitive to maximizing what we can provide with our JTS system for those lower income riders. So some of the things we've been able to do include using an additional state shared revenue payment to reduce our fare. Janesville had edged up to $175 per ride. We were able to bring that back down to $1.50 per ride. And half-price fares are available for our students through the Janesville School District, as well as those who are elderly or disabled. We are always looking at our routes. We do a very extensive review every 5 years. And one of the things that we're looking at is making sure that our routes are in close proximity to all of the major service organizations for the lower income population, as well as areas of larger multifamily housing, for example, and trying to make sure that we cover those areas as best we can. Many of our routes are half-hour routes, but depending on where you're going, it can take longer than that to get to your final destination. So it's something we are aware of, and we're always open for suggestions, but just keep in mind limited resources as well.
Great question. Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I'm sorry, I don't mean to push. I gotta go to work. I would like to speak. My name is Tequila Bridges. I am a part of the community. I am a part of Janesville community. I've been here 5 years. I have several kids and several grandkids. I have people that has been homeless and has been put in those situations also. You know, but I was listening to you all speak, and mainly you were speaking on youth. That's what we need. We need help with our youth, because if we get help with these youth now, we won't have to worry about that. They will already know what they need to do, what steps they need to take, where they won't go to homelessness. A lot of these kids that grow up don't know. They don't know, and we're here. We should be the ones to help. And it's not a black or white, Puerto Rican, Mexican thing at all. It's all groups. We all make mistakes, and the only way we learn is we learn from our mistakes. Homelessness and my nationality is something that's always there, and it's not just because of color. It's because of what one person has did before that person, so that other person gets judged. So where I'm coming from with this is, if we can work a program and get these youth, like you say, you got a program coming up. We got 17, 18-year-olds. Let's work on getting them into construction, getting some opening things where they can help the community also. That's jobs for them. That's opening community, you know, like internship with, you know, all type, you know, just being there with the youth. So we won't have this situation. We can stop, we can nip it in the bud now, working on our kids now, so when they get to this level and stage, they won't have to go through this. No, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I just wanted to add on to that, Hendricks in Beloit kind of partners with Career Tech. So that's something that to get into the whole, getting the kids into the careers, that's a great way to partner with them.
Are you in high school?
No, I was in ABC.
Oh, you look like you're in high school. Wow. So she just wanted to reference the wonderful work being done by Hendricks Career Tech down in Beloit to support our youth with internships. Wow. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Cameron Mirza, and so I know for the U.S., and this is a past example using history because like that's the thing I know most. So to get out of the Great Depression, one of the things that President FDR did and many local communities did was create forms of public work and cooperative work that would be using paid positions, but through the local governments and city governments. And I was wondering, how could something like that be created in Janesville and Rock County with cooperative paid work environments outside of businesses already present here?
All right, so Kelly's going to talk about that.
I'm glad you asked that. In this last year, the City of Janesville did partner with Community Action. We brought on 4 individuals who are working through their Fatherhood Initiative program. They came onto the City of Janesville in what we called an opportunity internship. They worked alongside our Public Works staff and crew and developed those skills. We had 4 that came on board. 2 of them didn't work out so well, but 2 were very successful. 1 left our organization and found permanent employment. The other one just left our organization fairly recently, and I believe is applying for a full-time position at the City of Janesville. So that's one of the programs that we started last year. We will continue to do that. In addition, we are exploring the possibility of a day labor program. We are looking at this time partnering with one of the local service agencies to help bring that concept to fruition, but we are exploring that.
Thank you, Kelly. Other questions for the panel? Great. Mason, why don't you come on down? You can ask next, and then Sir will get to you.
And just to kind of follow up with that as well, that partnerships and internships are great, but one of the things that we have to look at when you talk about cities and rock counties and things is the money aspect as well. Because there's a lot of programs we can do, but you have to be able to fund some of these things as well. So I think it's very important that you ask the question, but I want everybody to fully understand that this is not something that you can just wake up and say, let's do, because most cities are already struggling with what can we do with the limited budget and the limited funds that we have now. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there as well.
Question for the panel.
As someone who's younger, I actually go to high school. I was wondering, what can you guys do to bring this kind of education? Like everything you've said has actually been semi-surprising to me in some way, shape, or form. Because I don't think a lot of high schoolers actually get educated about what you guys are talking about. And so I guess what I'm wondering is more, is there a way we can bring this kind of information to younger people?
Who wants to respond?
That's one of the easiest questions probably that we've had this evening. And I think that the thing to do is individuals like yourself, contact Tammy, contact any one of us, say we want to have a panel discussion on this day at the high school. Are you willing to come out and discuss what you do? And it's done. That's exactly what I mean by saying you take action. You're hearing what you like, you want to do something about it immediately, so now you want to take action. So you just contact the individuals. I have a card here, I'll give it to you before I leave. I'll be happy to come out and discuss it. And not only that, you can reach out to the cities. Janesville, Beloit, Rock County, they have individuals that will come out and educate the public and even students on what's going on. So it's a simple ask.
I was just going to add that we do a lot of presentations in classrooms or maybe to a specific organization within the school. But I love the idea of doing some kind of panel so that it can reach the whole student body, because getting into the psychology class in Clinton or Beloit Turner sociology class or this and that is not enough. I mean, there are so many youth who want to make a difference and get engaged in their community, and that is the perfect way to reach them and be able to not just give them information on youth homelessness, but homelessness in general, and try to activate all of that young energy and helping out however they can.
Other questions for the panel? Chief?
I'm so happy when Kevin got on this thing. Just obviously, this is a regional problem, and all of us in Janesville and Beloit can see this, that the cities individually really can't accomplish much. And I guess the question goes towards Councilor Levy, now on the county board, and I'm really glad you're in that position. In terms of, there's multi-prongs to this. We got kids, we got people that can't afford housing. From a law enforcement perspective, what we see a lot of is people who are addicted, and drugs, alcohol, mental health. And we don't have any place, we can't do anything with them because there's no wet facilities to take them to. So there's dry facilities and there's wet facilities, okay? A dry facility is someone that takes in someone who is homeless, who is not drug or alcohol addicted. Right. If you are, we're maxed out on our dry facilities, right? I mean, these folks do a fabulous job, but at the end of the day, we're kind of maxed out on that capacity. And we have all these other people who are wandering around drug and alcohol addicted that we often come into contact with and have not much tools, or there's not much we can do with them. We've had officers on our department, I'm sure all the departments have done this, put people up for a night in a hotel because there's just nowhere else to go with them. And I think as part of maybe a comprehensive county board project or group, which I'm sure we have volunteers here that would like to participate, because funding is an issue. But when you look at federal grant potential, if you have maybe a larger consortium, and then we try and apply for some federal grants to etch out some of the prongs of this problem little by little, so that we have some solutions, because right now for most of us, right, we're out of solutions. There's not much, we keep doing the same things, but we're not really gaining a lot of ground. So I guess that's kind of a question and a suggestion at the same time. So, thank you.
All right, we can take one or two more questions. Yes, sir.
I also have a loud voice, so I'll just stand here. What would a family do to qualify to take in a homeless student, for instance, a teenager? What is the process one would have to go through, or is there even a hope of?
So his question is what would a family have to do to take in a homeless student?
So, two things. Obviously, I'm really loud. Obviously, Rock County has the foster care program, which is always in need of additional homes to foster all children, and especially older kids, because a lot of times that's how the high school students we end up with, maybe they had been in foster care as a younger person and then was sent back home, or whatever had changed in that, ends up basically in the same situation, and that's when they end up homeless. And then the foster care system doesn't have a lot of families that will take in a teenager. So that's one way. Another way is a program called Safe Families for Children, which is preemptive of foster care. So in order to divert that whole out of home, or system involvement in out of home placement, people can sign up, receive training. Safe Families is a national program that, again, they will train you, they will, vet you out, they will provide liability for you, and you would provide likely temporary shelter for a young person or student while their families may be dealing with an addiction issue or economic hardship, whatever it may be. But that's an excellent program, and we try to refer people to that, because then we can refer some of our kids to that.
Thank you, Tammy. All right. Can we give a round of applause for our panel of experts?
Thank you, each one of you. I think the most important thing that we heard tonight was that we need to share our voices. One of the main struggles I think a lot of the homeless have, as far as what I've heard, is the stereotype. The compassion that we really have to have for our friends and neighbors and who are dealing with this struggle. So thank you, each one of you. I would like to thank JATV for filming this tonight. And so please share this information with your neighbors and with your students. I know there are several teachers in here. You are a powerful voice. And Angela Lynch will be standing back here if you did not have a chance to sign in and get credit for coming tonight, because we know you are going to be enlightening so many of your students now as far as your information. So be sure that you either signed in on one of our sheets or you'll see Angela there in the back. I would quickly like to recognize Rock County Sheriff's Department. You have a fabulous program and I'd like for you to come and share it.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Deputy Montag, or Ryan Montag. I'm thankful for everybody who came here tonight, and I appreciate everybody who put this together. So I'm here to kind of talk about our program a little bit. In what Kevin was saying, I realized that I could be part of a solution. I tried my best to come together with a voucher program that our sheriff's office could use. There are 3 people I definitely need to thank and who are a big part of the voucher program. One of them is Lieutenant Hassey from the Town of Beloit Police Department. He was a person who put together a program called the First Light Program, and through speaking with him, I gained the basis that I needed to create the foundation for our program. 2 other people that I need to thank are the general manager and front office manager from the Holiday Inn Express in Janesville, which is off of Wellington Place. Their names are Brian Thiering and Jesse Dobbs. They were willing to partner with us so that we could create this program, and without those 3, we would not be able to have the voucher program that we do. So what is the voucher program? The Rock County Crisis Voucher Program is a hotel voucher program that we use to offer to individuals who need temporary housing, who are able to utilize it for a specific time frame and who are experiencing homelessness, unfortunately. This came about as I did research and learning what the different resources that our community offered. I realized that it would be very helpful for our sheriff's office to have a program that we could utilize when other programs aren't as available. As you can imagine, if you're working 3rd shift or 2nd shift, some of these programs don't have the same operating hours that somebody who works nights or 2nd shift work, but people are still out there who need to utilize these programs or who are going through or experiencing homelessness. With that, I learned that the town of Beloit had their own program called the First Light Program, so I reached out to Lieutenant Hassey and spoke with him. With that information, I was able to gain a foundation and go out and speak with 12 different hotels and their managers. I was lucky enough to meet Brian and Jesse at the Holiday Inn Express in Janesville. They were very excited about the program and very helpful and wanted to be a part of it. With that, we were able to come together with a set of requirements and procedures that would work well for the hotel and also work well for the sheriff's office. And we were able to come up with our own Rock County Sheriff's Office voucher program. After meeting with them, I was able to secure 14 vouchers for the first year. And thanks to my superiors who were willing to do a social media posting with the Holiday Inn Express with Jesse and also Brian, we were able to secure 10 vouchers each year moving forward. Some of the requirements for the program are very similar to the First Light program. So a deputy who's utilizing it has to first identify who the individual is, kind of get the background story of what they're going through. They have to make sure that the individuals aren't under the influence or on drugs or aren't disorderly. If all those three aren't an issue, the individual can be offered a voucher, and there are a specific set of requirements that we have to explain to the individual who's utilizing the voucher, which are very similar to most hotels, which are things like you can't smoke in the hotel, you can't have pets in the hotel, and then there's a specific amount of people have to be there. It's also our responsibility as deputies to make sure that the individuals understand that the voucher program has a specific time frame, and they have to understand when that time frame is exhausted that they have to utilize other resources or find other options that are available to them. We currently have 13 vouchers left, and we've used the voucher program successfully one time, and we've been using it for roughly 3 months. Again, I definitely need to thank Brian Thiering, Jesse Dobbs, and Lieutenant Hassey.
A book that I would like to recommend strongly, well, actually 2 books. One, It Can't Rain All the Time by Brandon Lee, and the other one is It's Never Too Late to Be What You Could Have Been by George Eliot. I have heard fantastic ideas tonight, and we always like to, with the DAT, we have really strong programs, but we'd also like to give people ideas of things that they can do when they walk away, because so many times you think, oh my gosh, this is a situation. I mean, we've heard the dilemma within the cities. What can we do? So we came up with some ideas. I have a feeling that each one of you has something in mind that you would like to do to make a difference in Janesville or Beloit or Clinton, any of our Rock County. Could I just see a show of hands real quick? If you have an idea, I'm not calling on you. I just want to see if you have an idea, if something's just jumped into your mind and you say, okay, this may sound a little crazy, but I think I'm going to give it a try. Any of you have that sense? Okay, all right, good news, good news. The one young man that was up here earlier, Mason Gordon, is that right, Mason? Okay, he has a program called the Food Train, and it's asking individuals to donate time or effort or food, actually, going to businesses, talking with individuals, and I think Mason, if it's okay with you, I'd ask you to put it on our DAT Facebook page so that all of you can take a look at it and see if you'd like to participate in some way. It's so exciting to see young people really taking a big interest in this, because that's what it's all about.
Could you describe that real quick?
Would you like to, Gordon? Or Mason?
I'd love to say a word or two.
Okay. Thank you all. You've been great.
Hi there. So yeah, my meal train. It's less about money and it's more about just being able to bring enough food to these people, because homeless shelters, they do everything they can, and a lot of the time they have to rely on essentials. What my charity is doing is trying to give them something more, bring them something extra, and I think that's what I heard a lot of ideas today when I was here, and it's just about doing it. It's just about committing. It took me 2-3 months to get this done, and now I have only 50 slots left to actually fill in for the next 8 weeks, and yeah, it's really incredible what people can do, and I'm really amazed at what I've done with this meal train. That's all.
Thank you so much. Oh, it's exciting, isn't it? When we work together, we know we can accomplish a lot. I would just like to mention getting in touch with your senators, if you have that as far as an interest, your state legislators. They're working on bills for homeless individuals, and they really need to hear from each one of you. Our city council is working on, it sounds like we'll be presenting the idea of sunset clause for homeless parking. And so if you're interested and you would be willing to attend the next council meeting, I believe that's March 9th. And the time is what, Mark?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, okay, at City Hall. And we'd love to see your faces there. DAT also has Courageous Conversations coming this next Monday. And they're gonna have a fishbowl of students from the area that will be sharing their experiences, their thoughts, African American students. We want to all come together and understand each other better. And this would be an ideal way. It'll be in Beloit. Check on our DAT Facebook page, please, if you're interested. And March 19th, we'll be having another program that'll be focusing on racism and how we can bridge the gap, how we can learn more about each other and do it together. So thank you so much for everything.